Hello, this is Mike Van Meter, and welcome to the Recovery is Possible podcast. I want to thank you for joining me today, and you can reach us at our Facebook site, which is also called Recovery is Possible, or our website, which is vanmeterwellnesssolutions.com. So Facebook site, Recovery is Possible, or our website, which is vanmeterwellnesssolutions.com. And this podcast exists to educate the public about addiction, remove the stigma associated with addiction, and offer help and support to those suffering from addiction. So folks, have a great guest today. And our guest is Lisa Taylor, who I met going out to Ohio when I went out to work with Ohio PCIS. And PCIS stands for Post Critical Incident Seminar. And that's to work with first responders. And by first responders, I mean police, fire, EMTs, corrections officers, dispatchers, and actually some military has started to join that whole program. And that's designed to help people into wellness and overcome just cumulative buildup, or maybe just a particular stressful event that they went through. And we help these folks really just take care of themselves. And it was while going out there to doing presentations myself that I met Lisa. I'm not sure how long ago we met or when the first time we met, probably about a year ago, maybe a little bit more. But Lisa told her story, and I was really moved by it because just an incredible story of, going through a traumatic incident, horrible incident, and then turning that around in such a positive way. And the way that Lisa did that is really it was an inspiration for me and will be for you as well when you hear her story. So with that, Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike, for having me.
Yeah. Well, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I retired from the Ohio State Highway Patrol. I spent 25 years there with the division, loved every minute of it. Now I'm a full-time faculty member at Ohio University, and I am a program coordinator and teach, kind of oversee the law enforcement tech program at the Lancaster campus of Ohio University. I also co-own a consulting business with two other partners, and we really focus more on risk management, traffic crash reconstruction, background investigations, computer, mobile, digital forensics, and that kind of thing. And so one of my two business partners is a retired highway patrol officer as well. So we bring a lot of the things that we did with the division to our consulting business. So that's me kind of in a nutshell.
Yeah. And so how long ago did you retire?
This year, I think it's been 13 years ago.
13 years ago. And you retired as a major from the Ohio State Highway Patrol, correct?
Yeah, I commanded our Office of Finance and Logistics Services, and my staff and I oversaw the budget, the fleet, facility, and procurement functions for the entire organization. And one thing I did forget in my intro, I also worked for 3 years as a senior operations manager. It was a deputy director level position at a community-based correctional facility here in Columbus. So I got to see a different part of the criminal justice spectrum doing that.
Yeah, that's right. And so if you could quickly, I understand that with the patrol, you were a first in a number of areas in the patrol.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I'm a big believer that, with the right people around you, you can do great things. So I came on the patrol in 1983 and became a trooper in 1985. Was promoted through the ranks and made it to the rank of major. But I was the first female post commander or lieutenant. I was the first female staff lieutenant, which is an assistant district commander. I was the first captain and district commander, and was the first major. So I was really fortunate. I had some great people that helped lead, guide, and direct me to get there.
Yeah, it's a great story, and the part of your story that leads into where we are today is you. One of your hobbies is riding motorcycles, correct?
Yeah. I've always been a huge motorcycle enthusiast. My dad and I, kind of shared that passion and rode all over the country. And at the time, leading up to what you're getting to, I had probably ridden a 500,000 miles via motorcycle. In fact, at one time I had 6 in my garage. I kind of had this vision of having one for every day of the week, but I didn't quite make it.
And so what happened? Take us through that, because I believe you go ahead and you tell the story. I think it was after you retired from the patrol. No. I take that back. You were still with the patrol and you went on a cross-country trip. And if you could just take us from there.
Yeah. Every year, a group of ladies and I would take a big motorcycle trip. And normally we would take a 2-week trip. And this particular year, I could only go for a week because I was right in the middle of grad school and they had pretty stringent attendance policy. So I told my friends, I said, I can only take a week. So 2 of my friends were from Des Moines. One was from Marietta, Ohio, and everyone met at my house here in Grove City, Ohio. And we left the next day, and we were heading toward the Laurel Highlands of Pennsylvania. And along the way, we had stopped in Wheeling at the casino. We spent the night, and next morning we got up, had breakfast, and we started heading east on Route 40. And incidentally, this was Friday the 13th, which becomes kind of important. So on Friday the 13th, I'm the lead bike heading eastbound on Route 40 when an impaired driver, about 2:00 in the afternoon, came left to center and hit me head on. He slid 5 feet into my lane, and we had a combined impact speed of about 70 miles an hour. So the guy who hit me ended up being on Oxycontin, Valium, antidepressants, and cocaine. Law enforcement ended up getting a search warrant and taking his blood. And so the impact, as a result of the impact, I didn't walk for a year, and I didn't walk well for 2 years. So my left leg was completely degloved. I had endured 9 surgeries over the course of 4 months. My left hand was crushed as well. And so that required some hardware, as you can imagine. So, the recovery was long, and, I kind of had to reinvent myself at that point.
And so so the extent of your injuries, I mean, you were still with the patrol at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so what did that mean, professionally? Because I'm sure, having been in a profession for that long, not that it's your primary concern, but I mean, let's be honest. If I'm retired law enforcement myself, I know how we're wired. I know with all those physical injuries, at some point, at least I would sit back and go, "Oh, wow, the direction of my life has changed." What were you thinking, or what were they thinking?
Well, I was thinking, absolutely, I would be back in my job. And prior to my accident, we had a year of light duty. But, I was preparing to go back to work in a wheelchair in light duty. And frankly, I didn't work the road anymore. My job was administrative. Like I said, I drove an unmarked car. I wore civilian clothes probably a third of the time. But I had every intention of going back. I thought, well, I've got a year of light duty. I can get well and pass physical and go back. But it was the decision of one man who arbitrarily made the decision to change the rules. And as I was preparing on a Friday to go back to work on Monday in a wheelchair, this individual sent 2 people to my house and said the rules have changed. And if your doctor can't guarantee today that you'll be back to full duty with no restrictions in 6 months or less, we're going to separate you. Now, you have a choice. You can either be separated, which means no pension, no comeback rights, or you can choose to retire, and you have 5 years of comeback rights. And so, the choice was made. I couldn't not have a paycheck.
Right.
I couldn't risk my pension. So I made the decision to retire. But I was pretty angry about that because the rules did change for me and certainly for everyone else after me. But I still, had this desire to come back, and I had every intention of working my way back to return to the patrol. But what they didn't tell me is this: if I got to the point where I felt like I could pass the physical, I had to go to my doctor, who had to sign off that I could try. Then I would have to go to our academy doctor, and that doctor would have to sign off for me to try. And then finally, I would have to go to the retirement board physician, who too would have to sign off to let me try. But what they didn't tell me is if I did that and I took the physical and I didn't pass, not only do I not come back, I lose my pension, because now I have 3 doctors saying that I could come back to work. And so I couldn't risk that.
No.
I make more on my pension than I do, as a college professor. So that was not a viable choice at that time.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about taking care of your people.
Right.
And I know throughout my entire career, I was always told what a family we were, and how we're always out to take care of ourselves. And then you have something like this happen, and then you realize it may be a family, but it may be a very dysfunctional family.
Well, and I do want to clarify though, Mike, because I don't hold the division responsible for that. I hold one person responsible for that.
Right.
Right. The division treated me very well, and I will always be thankful for that. I had a great support system. They have been nothing but good to me. But that one person, I was pretty upset about that.
Well, and that leads into where we are with this particular discussion. And those that are listening to this podcast are either in recovery, trying to get in recovery, or knows someone that needs to be in recovery, or they're supporting someone that is. And we all know that it's the moments like this that really can take us down that dark hole. When you have, we talk about people, places, things, and situations are what lead us down that dark hole, causes and conditions. That if you're wired the right way and you have the right or wrong exposures, incidents like this can really, really take you to a dark place. So here you are, you're facing this, right? So it's bad enough that you battle for your life. You're wondering if you're ever going to be physically the same, or be able to do the things that you want to do and the things that you love. And I mean, that's bad enough. That's a bad enough journey for anyone. But now you're facing this issue at work, and you're wondering, at first you're worried about your career and getting back to work. And now it's a matter of, am I even going to get a pension after all these years? And that's got to be, so how did that, so at the same time, you're working on getting well physically and mentally, but you have this battle going on. How did that affect you? I mean, you personally so what was going on with you at this point? Because it had to be a struggle as you were facing this. Well,
the crash was a life-altering kind of situation. And, my life changed drastically that day. The fact that I had to retire on a disability pension meant I lost 40% of my income every year for the rest of my working life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, who knew that was going to happen? But thankfully, I've been a saver, and I didn't lose my home. No bill went unpaid, and I had $500,000 worth of medical bills. But I had to reevaluate and reassess where am I going to go, because it didn't look like I was going to get back on the patrol. But the fortunate thing was I had 25 years in, and I was able to retire, and I retired well. But I wasn't mentally ready to retire. Mm-hmm. I wasn't ready. At that time I was 43 years of age, and I was too. I felt like I still had a lot to offer, and so I had to kind of, again, reinvent myself. So once I got to the point where I could walk well, I started actively looking for work. I was very fortunate because I got in as an adjunct professor at Ohio University back in 2008, and that opened a lot of doors for me. I applied for a job at a community-based correctional facility and ended up getting that, and did that job for 3 years. And it was a great opportunity to see a different part of the criminal justice field. But I will readily admit I'm more geared for the law enforcement end rather than the corrections end. But I teach about that now, so I'm very, very thankful for that opportunity. Made some great friends, learned an awful lot. With the Highway Patrol, I oversaw a $300 million a year budget. At the community-based correctional facility, it was only a $5.2 or $5.3 million budget. But, it taught me a whole different part of government. I'd worked for a state agency, and now I worked for a county agency. And so I did that. And in the interim, also started a consulting business with two of my friends. And I will readily admit my two business partners do way more with the business than I do today because I teach full time, but they travel, they work all over the country and do crash reconstruction and all kinds of other computer, mobile, digital forensics kind of things. So, had it not been for the wreck, I wouldn't have had some of those opportunities. And so, I think you and I talked kind of off as a sidebar conversation earlier. I can't begrudge the situation when it has actually blessed me in so many ways, if that makes sense.
Well, it does. And that's where we're leading to this next, because I know you and I share sort of the same worldview. And for those of you listening that are in recovery or have been around recovery programs, about this whole concept of, nothing happens by an accident. Everything happens for a reason. And I know that I don't know what your viewpoint prior to your accident and prior to this whole incident or this whole journey for you was, but I know that that's what you believe now. And so flashing back, because I know you got down this journey because of what happened in the crash initially. And so what happened after that was, obviously there's some legal implications for this individual that hit you. And preparing for that, the legal situation kind of led you to collecting notes and preparing for that. And tell us a little bit about that story and what that led to.
So the crash happened, like I said, on Friday, the 13th of July in 2007. And during that time, I was keeping notes. And I have to tell this story because this is such a God thing. So when I was riding my motorcycle on Route 40, I actually had a passenger who was also a highway patrol officer. And we all had our own bikes, but for whatever reason, that particular trip, we decided to double up. And so, we were both pretty injured pretty badly. And interestingly enough, I had been part of a process years before with the Highway Patrol where I would go around the country and I'd help other state police agencies prepare for assessment centers. And I would help them, evaluate officers. Well, years before my wreck happened, I had gone to an assessment center. I believe it was in Pennsylvania. And I met a captain on the West Virginia State Police. Her name was Tina. And befriended her, and after the assessment center, we remained friends, and she had been to my home, I'd been to her home, we visited and so forth. The day of my wreck, she happened to be having a pool party at her home, and one of her guests that showed up said, "Boy, there was a really bad wreck on Route 40 involving two Ohio State Highway Patrol officers." And she said, I don't know how I knew that, but I just knew it was you. And so my friend Tina left her pool party, jumped in her uniform, and went to Wheeling Memorial Hospital and met me there. And she said, I don't know how I knew this, but I knew this was you. And so she was wonderful in going to some of the pretrial hearings for me because I was not mobile. And so she would go to some of the pretrials and take notes for me and report back to me as to what was going on with my case. So during this time, from July of 2007 until May of 2008, when we were prepared to go to trial, I was collecting all this information, the notes, everything about the case. And so the week that I was supposed to go to trial in May of 2008, we were supposed to start the trial on a Friday. And on Wednesday, the prosecutor in West Virginia called me and said, don't bother showing up. And I said, well, why? And he said, the guy who hit you committed suicide, which I would have never, ever, ever, ever wanted. I didn't hate him. I wanted him to get help. But he, like many people, kind of, was injured back in the mid-90s, from what I understand, fell off a ladder at his workplace. So he was involved in an industrial accident. And as a result of his injuries, his doctor prescribed him OxyContin and, different narcotics. So, I think, he legitimately got hooked on painkillers, and that kind of took him down that rabbit hole that you talked about.
Yeah.
And you and I both know that when law enforcement started cracking down on doctors who were prescribing these things so readily, people had to go to other measures or, find other ways to deal with their pain issues. So he committed suicide. And I ended up writing a letter to his family and explaining that I certainly would never have wanted that to happen and just wanted him to get help. So when I found out he committed suicide, I thought, well, gosh, what do I do with all these notes that I've been compiling over the course of, almost a year now? And so those notes ended up evolving into a faith-based book. I entitled it, Was It Irony or Was It God? Because like you said, I'm a Christian, so I believe there is a plan. And I believe that everything happens for a reason. Nothing happens by happenstance. And so, it evolved into this book. And, whether anyone ever reads it or not, I certainly, it was very cathartic for me to tell the story.
Well, I read it, so at least I've read it.
Thank you.
And it is a fantastic book. It really is.
Thank you.
Yeah. So in writing that book, so you tell people this story. So he committed suicide, and you believe that everything happens for a reason. Mm-hmm. And what are you using that journey now to do what? What is the message that you want people to hear from this? Because this was a collision course of his addiction. It mm-hmm. changed your life, and based on your faith, you believe everything happens for a reason, and that ultimately there is a purpose for everything that happens in your life. And that purpose is always for another plan. And so with that, what do you think in your life right now is going on? What is that plan, or what are you using it for? How do you think it's impacting others?
Well, when my wreck happened, I was in a dark place. I was angry. I was pretty bitter for a while. And incidentally, during my recovery, I endured a number of surgeries over the course of 3 months. And what I didn't say earlier, not only was my leg degloved, all the muscle, skin, big parts of my bone. But when the EMTs were loading me into the squad, one of them inadvertently dropped the end of the gurney, and I hit the pavement.
Ooh.
And so a foot of my bone in my left femur hit the pavement, and that was bone they could never reuse. So over the course of 4 months, not only did I have muscle graft surgery, skin grafting, my final surgery was bone grafting, and worst surgery of my life, right? I mean, this was the worst surgery. But prior to the bone grafting surgery, I had been on Oxycontin 3 times a day, every day for 4 months. And, I never felt high from that drug, but I decided one day, as I lay in a hospital bed in my living room, that I wasn't going to take it anymore. And I quickly realized how dependent my body had become to that opiate. And I started going through withdrawal. And to the point where my family was ready to call the squad because they didn't know what was going on. And frankly, neither did I. I'd never experienced anything like that. So they called the pharmacist, and the pharmacist said, she can't just stop that. She needs to wean herself off that slowly. So I did, right? Instead of taking 3 a day, the next week I took 2 a day, and the next week I took 1 a day. And I finally got off of the painkillers. And so fast forward to November of that year, they said, we need to do the bone grafting, because where I had been missing that foot of bone in my left femur, they had actually put concrete in my left leg to hold the place. And so, and that was, I was non-weight bearing. So the concrete simply held the place of the bone until they could do the bone grafting. And you can't do bone grafting until you have the flesh and the muscle to support it. So they stabilized my leg, did the skin grafting and the muscle grafting, let that all heal. And then 4 months after my wreck, they opened that flap back up, took the concrete out. And the plan was to use my own bone marrow from my right leg with some collagen and cadaver bone and recreate my left femur. Well, remember, I told you I was off opiates, and I told them I did not want to use opiates during that surgery, which was the worst surgery ever. So during the surgery, they had to harvest bone and marrow from my good leg to put in my bad. And what they didn't tell me is they actually ran a rod through my knee and broke my good leg to fix my bad.
Oh my gosh.
And so when I woke up, I literally felt like I'd been hit by a truck. And I ended up, of course, I didn't know my leg was broken. I was bleeding internally and ended up having, I think over the course of this, about 11 blood transfusions. So they wanted to put me back on opiates. And I went through that surgery with Tylenol because I just refused to do that. That was a rabbit hole that I didn't want to go down. And so it was tough, but I quickly realized how dependent my body had become on that. And I didn't want to skirt that disaster. I didn't want to be one of the people who end up getting hooked on painkillers. So I teach law enforcement classes, criminal justice type classes, and I'm very open with my students, especially when I teach a class called Vice and Narcotics.
Yeah.
I don't identify as an addict. Let me make that very clear. But I recognize now how quickly someone can become addicted to prescription medications, which can lead to other things. And so while I don't identify as being an addict, it sure made me realize how quickly that could happen. And I share that story with my students because I think, if I can help one person not go down that road, then I've been successful in that regard. But it sure made me a lot more empathetic toward people who legitimately get hooked.
Yeah, and it really shows you how our addiction, if you have that addiction, how it can impact others. often hear in the recovery world, people I work with, people that are in that like pre-contemplative stage or contemplative stage of recovery, when they in the back of their mind, they are thinking that, I need to do something about this, for me, but I'm not quite there yet. You hear people say, I'm not harming anyone else. Okay.
Mhm.
What I do with my body, what I do with my life is my business, and I'm not harming anyone else. But I think this is an example of where that's not, you got to remember our use can and does have impacts other people. It impacted you. I mean, it altered the course of your life. It
Absolutely.
impacted, him obviously, and then just think of the family. His family, your family, and his family. And I think that we forget that, just how destructive addiction can be on everyone in our universe. He ended up not being a productive member of society. I don't know if he had children. I don't know if if he had children or a relationship at one point. Obviously, that's gone. I mean, it's just so much destruction all around, and it's never too late to get help. I don't know this individual's life. I don't know what attempts he made to get well, if he ever made an attempt to get well. But if you're listening today and you are in the situation that this man was in, there is help that's out there. Recovery is possible, and it can be done, and there are people that can help you. But you have to have that. The first step is willingness, and a willingness to learn from others, and to one, recognize that you need the help, and then be willing to get it. And then 3, actually start moving down the path to get well. So these types of things can, so these things can be prevented. Now, Lisa, what you did, what you turned this into a positive, I think the vast majority of people don't have the outlook that you have. And that's why it's such an inspiring story that you have, because it's just a great message that, no matter what happens to us, we can make it good. We can reinvent ourselves. We can move into a different direction. It's not the end of the book. It's just the end of a chapter, and you opened a new chapter, and you go into that new direction. And you've done an excellent job in doing that. So I know the first time I heard your story was you presented at the Ohio PCIS in front of the people that were attending. And I was just blown away at how positive you were. Everything. You were just so positive. Oh, this was an opportunity. This was, I really appreciate the people here, helping me out, because what they meant for harm, it's the old adage that what they meant for harm towards me, I used for good. And it really inspired me. And I will tell the listeners, the book, Lisa's book, Was It Irony or Was It God? I read it on the way home from that trip, the first time that we met. And it's not a hard read. It's actually, you can go through it pretty quick, but it's just so much packed into that book. And I just walked away. I didn't mention this, and it just occurred to me, Lisa, and you may remember this, when I saw you. Now I distinctly remember the first time I heard your story. A little backstory here. I blew a disc out of my lower back. Do you remember this, Lisa? When I came out to Ohio PCS, and it was on this trip. And just so the listeners know, about a week or two, maybe 2 weeks prior to going out on that trip, I blew out my lower disc, one of my discs in my back. Ultimately, had to have surgery. After I went on that trip to Ohio, I eventually had surgery, but I hadn't had surgery yet prior to going on that trip, and I was in incredible pain. And this seminar that we were at was 3 days, and I suffered. I mean, suffered through that whole week because I didn't want to back out of a commitment that I had made to the people to do a presentation there. And I was feeling sorry for myself. I was just feeling, because I just knew I was going to have to go through surgery. And I was just, in that woe is me type of thing and feeling sorry for myself. And I think you were the last speaker to go up before me. And right at the point where I was feeling sorry for myself, you got up and you told your story. And I didn't know your story, but then you told your story. And I felt bad because I was like, oh, I think I'll stop my complaining now. After everything you had gone through. Wow, what I'm going through is nothing.
Everything is relative, my friend.
It is, yeah. But I was really moved by your story. And I just appreciate you doing everything that you do and all that you do. And do you have one last message for our listeners today on, what would you want people to walk away with?
Well, one thing I did want to share, this Ohio Assist post-traumatic, post-critical incident seminars that we do, I was asked to be a participant back, I think, in 2016. And so I went through it and later became a peer. And then I became a presenter, and eventually was asked to serve as president of the nonprofit. And, that thing was truly a God thing too for me, because, that evolution of not only experience but the roles that I've played there has just been so therapeutic. It helped me realize that, everyone suffers trauma and everyone deals with it differently. But for me, kind of really helped me put things into perspective. And, if you're in that dark place, if you are going through rough times, you always have options. You always have options.
Yeah.
And there's always help. If you look. Now, rock bottom is different for everybody. Maybe you have to reach that rock bottom, but there's help out there. And, the work that, and I'm not saying this because I'm part of Ohio Assist, but Mike, I think you can attest too that, we're doing some life-changing work with that group, and just the fact that people can come in a safe place and talk about their issues and realize that there's help. I think is just an amazing thing.
It is, and just such important work, Lisa, and would really appreciate all that you do. And thanks again for your time. And folks, as always, I'm just going to say that I don't represent any group. We talk about a lot of different groups on here. We don't necessarily represent the groups as in we're officials from them, but we're just letting you know that these are the resources that are out there. And our only purpose in giving this information is to share with you what we've done, because it's helped us and maybe it can help you too. And we certainly do hope that it helps you, because if you're listening to this podcast, there's probably a reason why you're listening to it. And so if we've said anything that doesn't apply to you or you don't agree with, then that's okay. Just go ahead and discard that, but use the things that you can for yourself, and then use that to help others as well. That's what we do in recovery. We help ourselves along the way, and we help to impart the knowledge we've gained to help others as well. And so with that, please visit our Facebook page, Recovery is Possible, and our website, VanMeterWellnessSolutions.com. Hey, and if you get a chance, we've discussed Lisa's book, which is Was It Irony or Was It God? That's by Lisa J. Taylor, and it is available on Amazon, and it's not that expensive. It's a great book. I've read it. I highly recommend it, and you'll get to hear a lot more details about the story that Lisa went through, and it's just a very inspiring story. So, folks, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to our Facebook page if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or topics that you want to hear from. Let us know, and we look forward to seeing you all soon, and take care.